Hello, Old Outdoor Broad here, coming to you from Kings Canyon National Park in California, and it's really quiet right now because it's that time of morning when the people who were going to leave have left, and the ones who are coming in haven't gotten here yet. I say that because, wow, this has been a complete madhouse. Just a lot of kids, a lot of noise, some flies, and just a lot going on in this particular campground. But what I wanted to do today is, a while back I read an article about bottles for hiking for water versus bladders for hiking for water. And I wanted to put in my 2 cents, mainly because I have done all of the above. So I wanted to share my final decision with you and why I made that final decision. And first of all, a little history. Back in the day, when I was a kid and I was first getting into hiking and such, these didn't exist too terribly much. They were hard to find. Backpacking was really specialized. It was kind of like, mountaineering. But what we did have was we had an Army-Navy surplus store, and if you went there, you could get canteens. And that's what we used back in the day, was canteens. Interestingly enough, I was just in the Grand Canyon a couple weeks ago, and I saw a guy with the green belt with all the holes in it, because the original canteens, of course, had a holder that had 2 metal hooks coming out of it, and then those hooks went into the holes in that specialized belt, and that's how you carried your water, right? And I actually saw a guy with that only a couple weeks ago. Well, as you know, the outdoor industry has boomed in all those decades, and then these Nalgene wide-mouth water bottles really became the standard. And I remember when I first went from canteens on the belt to water bottles, well, now you got to have a place to put it. All this was evolving, right? So you had to buy pouches that you could hang off a strap on your backpack or your day pack, and then they started making on the sides of packs the longer pouches that you would just slip the bottle in. They used to be shorter, and so bottle didn't necessarily fit into that. And anyway, life went on, everything morphed, and then the bladders came out. I think platypus was the first bladder that I had heard of. And, when I first saw a bladder, a friend of mine had it, and it looked convenient, but the plastic just didn't look like it was going to hold up, and so I kind of steered clear of that. Then, many years ago, I bought a low internal frame backpack that I started using for my backpacking trips, and it came with a bladder. And it was really funny because when my friend who had already used a bladder and all that, she said, you have to establish the siphon mode to get it to work, because the tube came out of the top. And that was my first question. Well, how does the water flow, right? And she said, well, it's like a siphon. You get it going and then it'll just flow. And the first time I tried that with the low pack, it didn't work. I couldn't get any water out of it. So I actually flipped the bladder over, which tended to crunch it down in the backpack, but at least I could get water out of it. And that bladder was all crinkly, a really crinkly plastic, but amazingly enough, it lasted a long time. And I always monitored it for leaks, and finally it started to leak. So, but by that time, I was sold on a bladder, and I'm going to tell you why. So, a water bottle, one of the virtues in the article I read that they mentioned about a water bottle was it forces you to stop. Typically where your water bottle is, especially if you're using the pouches on the side of your pack, you can't easily get them, so you got to stop. You got to rest. Maybe you have to take your pack off. Maybe you can just turn it. If you're using little holders that go on your strap, obviously you don't necessarily have to do it. But typically, to unscrew and to not splash water all over yourself, you have to stop. You can't really drink well and keep walking, especially over like rocky terrain. And you know, me, if I did that and was drinking, walking a rocky terrain, I mean, I'd be flat on my face, right? So that was the virtue of it. It forced you to stop, and the fact that you always know how much water you have. The bladder, of course, the benefit of the bladder is you have the tube with the bite clamp, and you can just drink as you go. And that's one. So you don't have to stop to drink. But the major advantage to a bladder for me is weight distribution in your pack. All right, so those of you who backpack and maybe day hike a lot, you know the main weight needs to be close into your body. That's the most comfortable. And there isn't going to be anything you're going to carry, I hope, that's heavier than water. Water is typically the heaviest thing in your pack. And what a bladder does, it enables you to get that large amount of weight right up against your back. And for me, that's huge. Having bottles on the side, having them on your strap, that weight is in motion. And with a bladder up against your back, and then if it has a pouch like my low pack did, it's not going to shift because it's in a pouch. My Gregory Maya 20 that I have now for day packing, it is on a hanger, and it's in its own compartment, so it doesn't shift around. If you were just sticking it in, you know, you'd have to pack clothes and stuff around it to keep it from shifting. But you can manage that weight much, much better. So to me, that's a huge advantage. As far as stopping, well, you know, that's up to you. I stop all the time when I see beautiful things when I'm hiking. That's what I'm there for, is to take advantage of it. You know, as far as knowing the amount, that is a legitimate concern. So I'm going to tell you how this worked for me. Traditionally, when I use these, two on my average day hike. And maybe I'd use all of it, maybe I'd not. The point is, I learned over the years that if I had 2 liters of water for the average day hike, I was going to be okay. Once you know that, as long as you're not consuming beyond your normal, you'll learn. In other words, you'll be using the bladder and you'll be using the bite clamp, and you will learn what you're going through. Now, when I upgraded from that low bladder, because I used that bladder in multiple packs until it finally, you know, the plastic finally gave out and it leaked. This Gregory bladder that I replaced it with is 3 liters. So now I have 1 liter more than I have traditionally carried, and typically what I find at the end of the hike is I have plenty of water. Now, probably I'm being a little conservative because, yeah, I don't want to take my pack off and take everything out and look at the bladder and see how much water I have left. But again, I've learned enough over the years to know what my average use is. This has 1 liter more than that, so I have never run short of water on most of my hikes. Now, there was one exception. I did Horton Creek in the Tonto National Forest, and it was hot that day. And when I was coming, it was a loop. And when I was, after lunch, doing the second half of the loop, most of it was exposed and it was hot. And it was up and down on the Highline Trail for a while. And then after that, it was all down. But still, it was hot. And I was sweating quite a bit. And I was going through a lot of water. And I knew I was getting close to using it. Now, I didn't use it all. And when I got to the bottom to an actual water source, because the trail dead-ended in a campground, just for fun, I took it out and I had a little bit left, but yeah, I knew. So my overall vote is I'm all in for the bladder. I love it. It's just easy, it's convenient, it's excellent weight distribution, and I stop and look. That's on me. It's not my water holder's responsibility to make sure I'm enjoying the scenery and the sights while I'm hiking, and I already know my water consumption, and so far that's borne out with one notable exception, and I file that away in my memory, and next time I will know that. So there you have it. The Old Outdoor Broad has weighed in on the bottle versus bladder debate. If you have an opinion, let me know. Other than that, I'm going to continue enjoying the quiet here at the campground while it is quiet, anticipating that it's not going to last forever. And that being said, I will see you in the old outdoors. Thank you very much for watching.